I crossed the graduation stage alone, my name echoing into a room packed with families that weren't mine. 3 empty seats in the front row stared back at me colder than the February air waiting outside. While I shook hands with the dean, my parents were across town hosting a Super Bowl party, laughing, eating, celebrating everything except me. I held it together until I reached the parking lot diploma slipping in my hands. That was the moment something inside me broke, and something else finally woke up. I didn't know it yet, but the next choice I made would change my life forever. My name is Annabelle Rowan, and the morning of my graduation began with the kind of hope I should have known better than to hold. I woke before my alarm nerves buzzing under my skin, the cheap fabric of my rented gown hanging from the closet door like a promise I had earned inch by inch. 6 years of night lectures, early shifts, and quiet sacrifices had led me to that moment. I brewed coffee in the dark, breathing in the warmth, letting myself imagine just for a second that maybe today my family would meet me halfway. I wasn't naive enough to expect a parade. I just pictured my mother's soft smile in the audience, my father lifting a hand in that casual wave of his, my brother pretending he wasn't bored. Ordinary things other families took for granted, tiny gestures that would have told me, "You matter to us. We see you." The house was quiet while I got ready, slipping into the only pair of heels I owned, the ones I'd bought secondhand for job interviews. I checked my phone more times than I'll admit, waiting for a message saying they were on the way or asking where to park. Nothing came. Instead, an old group chat lit up with chatter about snacks for the Super Bowl party. My mother had sent a picture of her famous dip arranged perfectly on the coffee table, the caption full of exclamation points. My father joked about which team would disappoint him this year. Mason bragged about a bet he was placing. No one mentioned the ceremony. Not one of them asked if I was nervous or excited or breathing. Still, I told myself they'd show. That maybe this was how they calmed their nerves, distraction dressed as denial. I clung to that thought like a thread holding the whole day together. At the auditorium, families flooded the entrance in bursts of color bouquets, balloons, kids darting between legs while proud parents tried to wrangle them into pictures. My row was near the front, and the ushers had placed 3 seats aside with my last name printed neatly on the backs. It felt surreal seeing them there, reserved for people I had spent years trying to make proud. I smoothed my gown, checked my phone once more. Still nothing. My chest tightened, but I swallowed it down, refusing to let the panic bloom. I took my seat, staring at those empty chairs as the lights dimmed. A small, ridiculous part of me whispered, maybe they'll slip in late. Maybe they're parking. Maybe the traffic. But just then, another picture from the living room pinged onto my screen, the TV blaring pre-game commentary. My father's hand holding up a beer in the corner of the frame, Mason's laughter frozen mid-motion. That was when the truth finally pressed its weight onto my shoulders. They weren't coming. They had never planned to. The parking lot was colder than I expected. February wind whipped between the cars, slicing through my gown, as if it had something to prove. I made it as far as the back row of the lot before my knees gave out. One moment I was walking, holding my diploma with both hands, trying to breathe past the tightness in my throat, and the next I was sitting on the curb, the world blurring around me. My phone buzzed again. A picture from the party, my mother grinning beside a tray of wings, my father raising a glass, Mason posing with friends like he'd just won something. Not one of them wrote, "How did it go, Belle?" or "Send us a picture," or "We're sorry we missed it." The silence said more than words ever could. Tears hit my gown before I realized I was crying. Not loud, dramatic sobs, those might have helped. This was quieter, the kind of crying that feels like pressure giving way, each tear carrying years of swallowed disappointments. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my gown and laughed once humorless. I had crossed that stage alone while my family hosted a watch party for a game they'd already seen 100 times. I don't know how long I sat there, long enough for the crowds to thin, long enough for the ache in my chest to turn into something sharper clarity, or maybe the first flicker of anger finally given permission to breathe. When my phone buzzed again, I didn't expect much, but it wasn't my family. It was my Aunt Helena. Saw the ceremony photos online. Proud of you, sweetheart. Call me when you're free. The message was simple, but it settled differently inside me. Someone had seen me today. Someone who didn't want anything from me. I stared at those words while my breath fogged in the cold air. My diploma sat across my lap like a question I couldn't answer. What happens now? I couldn't go home and pretend it didn't hurt. I couldn't plaster on a smile and laugh at my father's jokes or Mason's excuses. Something inside me had shifted too far to slide back into place. That was the moment I opened the travel app. It wasn't dramatic. No triumphant music, no cinematic glow. Just me sitting on cold concrete thumb hovering over a list of flights I'd saved months ago. I'd always dismissed them as daydreams trips I'd take someday when I had time, when I had money, when my family didn't need me. But they always needed me, and needing me had cost me everything. My finger moved before my fear could catch up. One-way ticket, Colorado. A retreat I'd bookmarked during a sleepless night, promising myself I'd go when life got less hectic. Life was never going to get less hectic, not with them. The confirmation email pinged into my inbox. I felt the smallest exhale leave my body shaky but real. For the first time in years, I hadn't chosen them. I had chosen me. Colorado didn't look real from the airplane window. Snow powdered the mountains like someone had sifted sugar over the peaks, soft and untouched. I pressed my forehead to the cold glass, the hum of the engine steadying my breath. It was the first quiet I'd felt in years. No buzzing group chats, no sudden emergency bills, no guilt slipping under the door like a draft. Just white ridges, open sky, and the unfamiliar thought maybe I don't have to go back. The retreat sat tucked against a pine-covered hillside. The lobby smelled like cedar and citrus, warm enough to melt the last of the cold clinging to my skin. A woman at the front desk greeted me with a softness I wasn't prepared for. "Welcome, Annabelle. We're glad you're here." No one had said my name like that in a long time, with no expectations attached. My room overlooked a frozen lake. I stood at the window, watching the ice shimmer under the late afternoon sun, and realized my shoulders were beginning to drop inch by inch. I hadn't noticed how tightly I'd been holding myself. I told myself the trip was just a break, a pause, a place to reset before returning to Hartford and resuming the role I'd always played. Good daughter, reliable sister, walking wallet. But that illusion cracked the next morning. After a massage, I checked my phone out of habit. 15 missed messages, 13 from my family. Mom, can you send a few hundred? Dad need help with a bill, just temporary. Mason lost my card again. You know how it is. None of them asked about the ceremony. None of them even wrote congratulations. The final message came in while I was still staring at the list. It was from Helena. "Belle, honey, check your credit report. Now." A knot formed in my stomach. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened the app, and waited for the screen to load. When it did, my breath left me all at once. There were accounts I didn't recognize, store cards I'd never opened, a personal loan I had never signed for. Inquiries stacked one after another like someone had gone shopping for my identity piece by piece. I scrolled slowly, dread cooling my bloodstream. The dates lined up with every emergency request they'd made in the past month. Money they hadn't needed. Money they'd replaced with something far worse. The room felt smaller suddenly. The walls leaned in. This wasn't just neglect. It wasn't even casual betrayal. This was deliberate, calculated. They hadn't just skipped my graduation, they'd used my future to fund their present. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone until my knuckles burned. The hurt was deep, but beneath it something else stirred a steady rising heat that surprised me. Anger, yes, but also recognition. This was the moment the story changed. Not when they failed to show up for me, but when I finally saw them clearly. By the time I called Helena back, my hands were steady. She didn't sound shocked when I told her. "I hoped I was wrong," she said softly. "You need a lawyer, sweetheart, someone who knows this terrain." Her words landed like a blueprint, a path forward. For years, I had let guilt decide my choices. I had let love excuse harm. But standing there with the mountains watching quietly outside the window, I understood something simple and devastating. if I didn't fight for myself now, no one ever would. I flew back to Hartford carrying a folder thick with payments, bills, and inquiries, everything Carmen said I'd need if I wanted my life back. The clouds outside the plane window looked calm, but nothing in me felt that way. The retreat had given me clarity. Clarity, however, didn't erase fear. I knew exactly what my family would do when the money stopped flowing. What I didn't know was how quickly it would start. My apartment door had barely closed behind me when the pounding began. Heavy, frantic blows that made the frame vibrate. "Annabelle," my father shouted, "open this door right now!" My heart lurched. I stepped quietly to the peephole. His face filled the glass, flushed, furious. Behind him, my mother clutched her sweater dramatically, and Mason scrolled his phone like he was waiting for entertainment, not entry. The knocking intensified. "Belle," my mother pleaded. "We need to talk. It's important." My phone rang my landlord. "They're demanding access to your place," she said. "Do you want police involvement?" "Yes," I whispered. "Please call." Even through the door, my father heard the word. "Police." "Really, we're your family." But the word family meant something different to me now. When officers arrived, the hallway filled with echoing voices, my parents insisting it was all a misunderstanding, Mason claiming they just needed a few things. The officers escorted them out with stern warnings, but the sting of their accusations lingered long after the noise faded. I sat on my couch, hands trembling, and realized the truth: I wasn't safe with them anywhere near my life. The next morning, I returned to Carmen's office. She organized my documents with a precision that grounded me. When she finished, she tapped the stack gently. "This is enough, Annabelle. We can move forward." Within a week, a restraining order was granted. My credit was frozen, my accounts secured. For the first time, boundaries rose around me like small protective walls. Fragile, but real. Then came the email from Portland, a promotion, a transfer, a chance to start over in a city where no one knew the version of me who apologized for existing. I accepted without hesitation. Packing felt like shedding skin. With Tessa's help, I boxed years of exhaustion into cardboard and watched movers load them into a truck heading west. When I boarded the plane, leaving Hartford shrinking beneath me, I told myself the worst was behind me. I was wrong, but in a way that would save me. Portland was everything my old life wasn't: quiet, respectful, unintrusive. My new team valued my work. My apartment overlooked the lights of the city. For months, I told no one the whole story. Healing came slowly, like warmth returning to numb fingers. Then a business leadership conference invited me to speak about financial independence. I hesitated until Carmen said, "Your voice could help someone who thinks they're alone." So I said yes. The ballroom was enormous, rows of chairs, a stage washed in soft lighting, a murmur of conversation drifting like low tide. I went over my notes backstage, smoothing my blazer, trying to steady my shaking hands. When I stepped to the podium, applause rose politely. I adjusted the microphone. "Thank you for having me," I began. "Today, I want to talk about a crash at the back of the room," cut through my sentence. At first, I thought someone had dropped something. Then I heard the voice I'd spent months trying to outrun. "That's our daughter." My father's shout sliced through the hall. My chest tightened. Hundreds of heads turned. The doors burst open, and my family flooded in like a storm. My father red-faced my mother in practiced distress, Mason holding his phone up to record. "She abandoned us," my father bellowed. "Left us with nothing while she ran off to get rich." The audience murmured, confused. Cameras rose. My mother clutched her chest. "Annabelle, sweetheart, please talk to us. You're tearing this family apart." My grip on the podium tightened. Every instinct screamed to shrink, to apologize, to make myself small enough for their comfort. But something steadier rose in me, a voice shaped by Colorado Air Carmen's guidance and the knowledge that I had nothing left to lose. I leaned into the microphone. "Security," I said calmly. "They are in violation of a court order. Remove them, please." The room stilled. Then security moved in. My father roared. "A court order." "On your own parents," Mason stepped forward, still recording. "Tell them how you froze our accounts. Tell them how heartless you are." I looked him directly in the eyes. I protected myself. From all of you, gasps rippled through the crowd. Before another word could erupt, a sharp voice cut across the chaos. Douglas Rowan and Mason Rowan. A detective strode into the ballroom doorway. "We have warrants for financial fraud and identity misuse. Please step forward." The entire room erupted into whispers. My father sputtered. "This is ridiculous. We're her family." But the detective didn't flinch. Family doesn't excuse criminal behavior. As officers cuffed them, my mother lunged toward me, eyes wet, not with remorse, but panic. "Annabelle, stop this. We need you." I shook my head. "You needed my credit. You needed my silence. You never needed me." Her face crumpled, but for once, it didn't hook into my guilt. It drifted past me like smoke. When they were finally let out, the ballroom felt impossibly quiet. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me, not judgmental, but waiting. I stepped back to the microphone, exhaled, and began again. My talk today was supposed to cover budgeting techniques, but maybe what we really need to discuss is this: what happens when the greatest threat to your financial stability comes from the people you love, and what it takes to walk away. No one looked down at their phones. No one shifted in their chairs. I told them the truth, not with bitterness, but with clarity. I spoke about the empty seats at my graduation, the parking lot Tears the Retreat where I finally chose myself the discovery of every stolen line of credit. I spoke about fear and about freedom. When I finished, silence hung for a breath. Then the audience rose to their feet. Applause washed over me in a way I had never felt before, not because they pitied me, but because they recognized the courage it takes to build a life from the wreckage of a family who never showed up for you. And there on that stage, a different city, I realized something simple and profound: I wasn't alone anymore. The investigation moved faster than I expected. With the warrants served and Carmen guiding every step, the truth unfolded in black and white paperwork accounts, opened without my consent, loan inquiries tied directly to my father, and Mason patterns of manipulation stretching back farther than I wanted to admit. The court upheld the restraining order permanently. My credit was restored piece by piece. For the first time in my adult life, my future didn't feel like something my family could reach into and ruin. Portland became more than a fresh start. It became home. My office walls slowly filled with pieces of a life I chose, photos with coworkers who'd become friends, a small plant Tessa insisted I keep alive, and finally the framed diploma I hung above my desk. Not to prove anything to them, but to remind myself how far I'd walked alone. Some nights I still heard echoes of old guilt, but now they faded quickly, drowned out by something steadier. Safety peace, the soft but undeniable truth that I had saved myself. Standing backstage at my next speaking event, I looked out at rows of people waiting, people who chose to be there, who showed up without being asked. I touched the edge of my note cards and felt a quiet certainty settle in. Choosing myself hadn't destroyed my life. It had rebuilt it. If someone out there needed permission to walk away from a kind of love that only took, maybe my story could be that permission. If you've ever felt that way too, share your story and subscribe for more.